Hey, good morning. It's Patricia Murphy. It's Wednesday. This is Seattle Now. If you've tried to take a ferry lately, there's a good chance you had to steel yourself to the possibility you might be waiting a while. There are a couple of reasons for that. In a minute, KUOW's Noel Gasca will tell us what's slowing down the boats and how a new high school is trying to be part of a solution. But first, let's get you caught up. Two former Washington governors are weighing in on Seattle's city attorney race. Chris Gregoire and Gary Locke threw their support behind Ann Davison on Tuesday. Gregoire and Locke are both Democrats. Davison is running as a Republican. Notable here is the non-endorsement of progressive candidate Nicole Thomas Kennedy. The students are back for in-person classes. The UW campus welcomes students today for the first time since March 2020. And the new normal goes like this. Students have to be vaccinated or get an exemption by today to attend class in person. Unvaccinated students have to get regular weekly tests. Masks are required in all campus buildings, and it's proof of vaccination or a negative test at Husky football games and large sporting events. They'll be ringing the bells across campus throughout the day to celebrate. And two Seattleites are among the latest round of MacArthur Fellows announced yesterday. Fred Hutch computational virologist Trevor Bedford was recognized for building tools to track how viruses evolve and how infectious diseases spread. Poet and translator Don-Mi Che of Renton Technical College won for her work examining military violence, the legacy of the U.S., and its effects on the people of the Korean Peninsula. They'll each get $625,000 in no-strings-attached prize money to further their work. Taking a ferry is one of the unique parts of living here. But lately, it's been a lot harder to get on a boat. The state ferry system is in a crunch. The vessels are aging, and so are the workers.
The average age of the mariner right now, or the maritime worker, is in their 50s. So we've known that this silver tsunami was coming. Just like any industry, everybody goes, yeah, it's coming. It's coming. It's like that kind of, Game of Thrones, winter is coming. And people don't prepare for it, right?
More than 50 sailings were canceled on the Anacortes-San Juan Islands route in mid-September, according to the Skagit Valley Herald. And WashDOT says Seattle-Bremerton is down to one boat due to staffing shortages and repairs to other vessels. Add in the pandemic, and things are significantly slower. But now, a special school in the Highline District south of Seattle is hoping to help boost the ferry system in the long term by reaching out to young people and diversifying its workforce. KUOW's Noel Gasca visited the brand new Maritime High to find out how students prepare for a job on the water. Hey, Noel, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, as I mentioned, there is a real need right now for workers in the ferry system and the maritime industry in general. Tell me about this new school and how it's planning to fill the gap.
Yeah, so Maritime High School was really created to address that gap, that lack of representation of people of color and women in the maritime industry. And it's the brainchild of a couple different groups here in the Northwest. Highline Public Schools, the Port of Seattle, the Northwest Maritime Center, and the Duwamish River Cleanup Coalition. There's this huge issue of lack of representation of women in the maritime industry here in the Northwest, and also communities of color. And they basically recognized, what are we going to do to create pathways for these communities into the industry? And one of the solutions that came up was, let's reach out to the younger generation here in the Seattle area. And so they've created this super hands-on approach for students to introduce them to careers in the maritime industry. So their STEM classes incorporate marine science and climate science, and they even have a wood shop at their school where students get to learn how to construct and engineer vessels. And I got to talk to the principal of Maritime School, Tremaine Holloway, about the pathways the school is trying to create for students.
The goal is really to give them that exploratory type of learning. So we want to foster that. So as they grow, as they matriculate through high school, their sophomore year, they'll get a mentor, a one-on-one mentor in the field of maritime. And then that mentorship will hopefully turn into an internship opportunity for our students their junior and senior year.
This sounds like an awesome opportunity. Tell me what you're hearing from students about their excitement in this new school.
Yeah, so I was able to be there the first day of school, and you could definitely sense some jitters. A lot of these students were coming back for in-person classes for the first time too, since the pandemic. But some of the students came to the school already interested in the maritime industry and have some experience on boats already. And others said they just really see this school as a chance to explore interests that maybe in another high school they wouldn't have the opportunities to explore. You know, how many schools own a boat that they can go out and take classes on? I spoke to one student, Emmy Kissick, about why she's driving all the way from Olympia to come to Maritime High School.
I'm a sailor. I'm on a high school sailing team. I really love the water. I'm into boating. I think one of my future career paths that I was thinking about is becoming a ship's captain.
All the way from Olympia. That is a serious commitment. Tell me what it was like inside the classrooms.
Yeah, so I had the chance to sit in on a humanities class. And when I got there, I was thinking, okay, this is a humanities class. Maybe they're going to go over the syllabus and they're going to talk about the reading list. But instead, the class watched this documentary from Crosscut called A Tale of Two Waters. And that documentary is all about the cleanup of Lake Washington that happened about 60 years ago. And basically talking about when the cleanup happened, all this sewage and stormwater got diverted into the Duwamish River. And that cleanup happened at the expense of the Duwamish and the people who lived and worked there. And the students were able to talk about what they just watched, and they talked about the trash and the pollution they noticed along the river. And they had a lot of questions, like why did Seattle decide to divert the pollution into the Duwamish River in the first place? And what has local industry thought about or done about the pollution? So maritime really touches every part of students' education.
I love that they're introducing stewardship early in the process. A love of the water is a love of the environment as well.
Exactly. The love of the environment and addressing the history of the environment here in the Northwest is kind of a core central part of these students' education too.
Traditionally, this has been an overwhelmingly male vocation. And I know that the school is trying hard to diversify and be representative in its student body.
Yeah, so the placement of the school is very intentional. The Highline Public School was chosen in part because of its diverse student body. Out of almost 19,000 students in the district, almost 40% of students identify as Hispanic, 15% identify as Black, and almost 15% identifies as Asian. And Maritime High School is much, much smaller right now. Their ninth grade class, which is their only class right now, it's only 35 students. But 40% of that student body identifies as female, and 11% identify as non-binary. When you look at the racial and ethnic breakdown, about 50% of this class is white, but the school hopes that as it grows and it expands to, more grades, its demographics are also going to reflect the racial and ethnic makeup of Highline Public Schools in general.
You mentioned the small class size, about 35 students right now. There is a huge deficit in the workforce in the maritime industry. Is the school going to be able to produce enough qualified workers?
Yeah, that's a really complicated question because when you look at the numbers, the Port of Seattle is projecting a job shortage of 150,000 mariners by 2025. That's just 4 years away. And those jobs encompass careers in recreational fishing and boating, to research, to working on tugboats. So Maritime High School wants to make a dent in that shortage and get students ready in time for those careers. But they also want to keep classes small. And I talked to Principal Holloway about that too.
Our cap is going to be 400. So this year our cap was 45. So as you saw, we had a smaller group out here. But even when we get 9 through 12, our cap is still going to be 400. So that will keep our classes relatively small. That would allow us to have more intentional relationships with our students.
So a lot of the industry experts that I've talked to have put it pretty bluntly as well. We have a rapidly aging maritime workforce here in Washington. I talked to Sarah Shear. She's a former maritime and manufacturing advocate for the city of Seattle, and she noted that the average maritime worker here in the state of Washington is in their mid-50s, and that shortage is directly linked to it. We're going to have a lot of maritime employees retiring in the next few years.
And we've talked about it for years and years and years, and just like any industry, everybody goes, yeah, it's coming. And they think about it and they know it's coming, but they don't do anything. Now we're to a place where, especially after COVID, that people are struggling.
Noel, did you get any indication from anyone why this is an industry that is hurting so badly for workers, or is it just the same that most industries are dealing with right now?
Yeah, when I talked to Sarah Shear, she said the maritime industry isn't necessarily any more different than a lot of other industries that are seeing, shortages in employment right now. The thing about the maritime industry, especially here in the Northwest, is that historically it's been an industry and a trade that has followed families throughout generations. She mentioned that a lot of the people that work in these maritime industries, they were introduced to it through their grandparents or through their parents or through cousins. And as those employees are aging out, their children aren't entering those careers, there's a shortage.
Fascinating. And we should point out that these are pretty decent jobs when you think about the amount of money you'd be making in the industry. And if you're a state employee, the pension that's available to you after a certain amount of time on the job.
Right. The experts that I talked to really highlighted that these are jobs that these students at Maritime High School or beyond, you don't have to be a student at Maritime High School to enter the maritime industry, of course. You can get a job starting at, many cases, $70,000 right out of high school. And there's benefits and there's options. It's not just working on a tugboat. You could be working in research or repairing boats. So there's lots of career choices out there.
Noel Gasca, fascinating look at a changing industry. Really appreciate you visiting Maritime High School.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening today. And be sure to check out our Instagram page for photos from our episodes and the occasional poll. Jenny Cecil-Moore produced today's show. Our production team is Caroline Chamberlain-Gomez, Clare McGrane, Diana Opong, and Jason Pagano. Matt Jorgensen does our theme music. I'm Patricia Murphy. Thanks for listening.